Well, here I am, Third Commander Vex Kull of the Therion Warfleet, about to tell you the most ridiculous story you'll ever hear in your miserable existence. And trust me, after serving in 17 galactic conflicts, I've seen some pretty absurd things. But this takes the prize for sheer, mind-bending stupidity. You see, we Therions pride ourselves on being the apex predators of the galaxy. Standing 9 feet tall with razor-sharp claws that could slice through battle armor like tissue paper, we've conquered 43 star systems without breaking a sweat. Our bite force measures at 12,000 pounds per square inch. Our reflexes are 15 times faster than most species. We hunt in packs, strike without mercy, and leave nothing but devastation in our wake. So when the High Command assigned us to subjugate some backwater planet called Earth, populated by these soft, pink creatures called humans, I actually laughed. Not just a chuckle, mind you, but a full-throated, belly-aching laugh that echoed through the command bridge. These humans, they had no natural weapons, no armor plating, no enhanced senses. They were practically hairless, for crying out loud. What kind of evolutionary joke produces a species that needs artificial coverings just to survive their own planet's weather? Commander, my second-in-command, Thrak Mur, had said while reviewing the intelligence reports, these creatures appear to be nothing more than overgrown infants. Their skeletal structure is fragile, their skin offers no protection, and they require constant sustenance to maintain basic functions. I remember nodding sagely, already planning our victory celebration. Exactly, Thrak Mur. This will be the easiest conquest in Therion history. We'll probably finish before the midday meal. Oh, how wrong we were, how spectacularly, monumentally, catastrophically wrong. The invasion began exactly as predicted. Our dropships descended through Earth's atmosphere like metallic thunderbolts, and our advanced scouts reported minimal resistance. The humans scattered like frightened prey animals, which was perfectly normal behavior. What wasn't normal was the way they scattered. Instead of running in random directions, they seemed to be moving with purpose, almost as if they were following some predetermined plan. Curious, I muttered, watching the tactical display. They're not behaving like typical prey. Perhaps they're simply more organized than most species before extinction, Thrak Mur suggested. It matters little. Organization won't save them from our claws. Our first ground assault targeted what appeared to be a major population center. The humans called it Detroit, though I couldn't understand why anyone would name a city after what sounded like a digestive disorder. We expected to find cowering civilians, maybe some primitive weapons, perhaps a few desperate last stands that would provide mild entertainment before the inevitable slaughter. Instead, we found Marcus Kane. Now, Marcus Kane didn't look like much. Standing barely 6 feet tall, weighing maybe 200 pounds, he appeared to be just another soft, squishy human. His hair was graying at the temples, his face showed the wear lines of middle age, and he wore simple civilian clothing that offered absolutely no protection. By all logical assessment, he should have been running for his life like the rest of his species. Instead, he was standing in the middle of the street, arms crossed, watching our advance with what I can only describe as mild interest. Commander, Thrak Mur reported through the comm system, we have a single human male blocking our path. Should we simply walk around him? I studied the tactical display with growing bewilderment. A single human, just standing there? Affirmative. He appears to be waiting for something. This was already bizarre enough to warrant my personal attention. I descended from the command ship to observe this strange creature firsthand. As I approached, flanked by my elite guard, I got my first close look at Marcus Kane. His eyes were steady, calm, almost bored. There was no fear, no desperation, no sign of the primal terror that should have been overwhelming his primitive nervous system. "Human," I growled, my voice carrying the authority of countless victories, "you will stand aside or be destroyed." Marcus Kane looked up at me with the sort of expression one might give a particularly slow child. "Oh, you're the boss, huh? Great. Listen, I've got a proposal for you." "A proposal?" This tiny creature wanted to negotiate. I felt my mandibles click in amusement. You are hardly in a position to make demands, human. Not demands, Marcus said, his voice carrying an odd note of confidence. A challenge. See, my species has this interesting concept called fair play. Before you go trampling all over our planet, how about we settle this the old-fashioned way? Single combat. Your biggest, strongest warrior against me. Winner takes all. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. Then, slowly, a rumbling sound began to build among my troops. It started as a low chuckle, then grew into full-blown laughter. The idea was so absurd, so completely divorced from reality, that even my most disciplined soldiers couldn't contain their amusement. You, I said, struggling to speak through my own laughter, want to fight our alpha in single combat. You, a soft, weaponless creature, against Brutus Prime, our most feared warrior. That's the idea, Marcus replied, still displaying that infuriating calm. Unless, of course, you're afraid of losing to a soft, weaponless creature. Oh, this human was clever. He was using our own pride against us, knowing that no self-respecting Therion could back down from such a challenge. But his cleverness would be his downfall, because there was absolutely no way he could survive 30 seconds against our alpha. Brutus Prime was a legend among our people. Standing nearly 12 feet tall, weighing close to 800 pounds of solid muscle and bone, he had never lost a single combat in his entire career. His claws could punch through reinforced steel, his jaws could crush titanium, and his reflexes were so fast they seemed to bend the laws of physics. He had killed over 300 enemies in personal combat, each death more spectacular than the last. I activated my comm system. Brutus Prime, report to the front lines. We have a human who wishes to die with honor. The response came immediately, a deep rumbling voice that seemed to shake the very ground. Commander, I am on my way. This will be entertaining. While we waited for our champion to arrive, I studied Marcus Kane more carefully. He had removed his outer clothing and was now performing what appeared to be some sort of ritualistic preparation. He stretched his limbs, rolled his shoulders, and began breathing in a slow, rhythmic pattern. His movements were fluid, controlled, almost hypnotic. Tell me, human, I said, genuinely curious now, what makes you think you can survive against our alpha? Marcus looked up at me with a slight smile. Experience. Experience with what? Fighting children. Battling insects. Experience with physics, he replied cryptically. Before I could ask what that meant, the ground began to tremble. Brutus Prime was approaching. My troops automatically formed a wide circle as our champion emerged from the dropship, his massive form casting a shadow that seemed to swallow the sunlight. He was magnificent, terrifying, the perfect embodiment of Therion superiority. And Marcus Kane? He just stood there, waiting patiently, as if he were about to engage in a friendly sparring match rather than a fight to the death. Human, Brutus Prime growled, his voice like grinding stone. I will make your death swift. You have courage, if not wisdom. Appreciate the thought, Marcus replied, but I think you might want to reconsider who's about to die here. The absolute audacity of this statement sent another wave of laughter through my troops. Here was a creature with no natural weapons, no armor, no apparent fighting ability, calmly telling our most feared warrior that he might be the one to die. It was like watching a field mouse threaten a saber-toothed tiger. Brutus Prime assumed his combat stance, claws extended, muscles coiled for the killing strike. Begin, I commanded. What happened next defied every law of nature I thought I understood. Brutus Prime lunged forward with blinding speed, his massive claws aimed at Marcus's chest. It should have been over in an instant, another easy victory for Therion supremacy. Instead, Marcus Kane simply stepped aside, not quickly, not desperately, but with the calm precision of someone who had known exactly where the attack would come from. The massive Therion's claws whistled through empty air as Marcus moved with an economy of motion that seemed almost casual. But he wasn't just dodging, he was positioning himself, calculating angles, reading his opponent's movements like text on a page. Brutus Prime spun around, snarling in frustration, and launched another attack. This time Marcus didn't just dodge. As the Alpha's claws swept past him, the human reached out and grabbed Brutus Prime's wrist. For a split second I thought he had lost his mind completely. What could a soft human grip possibly do to a Therion warrior? Then Marcus Kane twisted. The sound that followed was unlike anything I had ever heard. It was the sound of joints being forced beyond their limits, of bones grinding against each other, of a predator suddenly finding itself in the position of prey. Brutus Prime's roar of pain echoed across the battlefield as his wrist was bent at an impossible angle. But Marcus wasn't finished. Using the Alpha's own momentum against him, he stepped forward and drove his elbow upward into Brutus Prime's throat. The impact was precise, devastating, and completely unexpected. Our champion stumbled backward, gasping for air, his eyes wide with shock and growing fear. "You see," Marcus said conversationally, as if he were discussing the weather, "the thing about being big and strong is that you rely on those advantages. But size and strength mean nothing if you don't know how to use them properly." Brutus Prime recovered his composure and charged again, this time with pure fury driving him forward. His claws swept in wide arcs, each strike capable of decapitating a lesser opponent. But Marcus Kane moved like liquid mercury, flowing around each attack, never quite where the claws expected him to be. And then, in a move that still makes my blood run cold, Marcus Kane went on the offensive. He ducked under a particularly vicious swipe, stepped inside Brutus Prime's guard, and struck upward with the heel of his palm. The blow connected with the Alpha's sternum, and I heard something crack. Not Marcus's hand, which should have been shattered by the impact, but something inside our champion's chest. Brutus Prime staggered, his breathing labored, but his pride wouldn't let him retreat. He gathered himself for one final, desperate assault, putting everything he had into a downward strike that would have split Marcus in half. Marcus Kane caught the descending claws with both hands. For a moment the two combatants stood locked in what appeared to be a test of pure strength. Brutus Prime, 800 pounds of muscle and bone, straining downward with everything he had. Marcus Kane, a seemingly fragile human, holding him back with nothing but technique and determination. Then, slowly, impossibly, Marcus began to turn the strike aside. "The secret," he said, his voice steady despite the tremendous forces at play, "is not to fight force with force. It's to redirect that force, to use it against itself." With a sudden fluid motion, Marcus twisted his grip and threw Brutus Prime's own attack back at him. The Alpha's claws, driven by his own strength, plunged deep into his chest. The look of shock on his face was almost comical, if not for the fact that he was dying. Brutus Prime collapsed to his knees, then fell forward, his life's blood pooling beneath him. The silence that followed was absolute, deafening in its completeness. Marcus Kane stood over the body of our champion, breathing hard but otherwise unharmed. He looked up at me with those steady, calm eyes and said, "So about that, winner takes all agreement." I couldn't speak. None of us could. We had just witnessed the impossible, the complete overthrow of everything we thought we knew about combat, about strength, about superiority. A soft, weaponless human had just killed our Alpha with nothing but his bare hands and an understanding of physics that seemed to border on the supernatural. "How?" I finally managed to whisper. Marcus Kane smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both friendly and terrifying. 25 years of martial arts training, specializing in combat applications of biomechanics and leverage dynamics. Also, your boy there telegraphed every move like he was sending smoke signals. As if his words had broken some sort of spell, my troops began to murmur among themselves. Fear, confusion, and something else I had never seen in Therion warriors before, respect. They were looking at this human with the same reverence they usually reserved for their own champions. But more importantly, Marcus continued, this was just the warm-up act. You see, I'm not even close to being the best fighter on this planet. I'm just a guy who teaches self-defense classes at the community center. You want to meet the real warriors? The ones who've been training for this their whole lives. He gestured toward the horizon, where I could now see movement, lots of movement. Hundreds of humans were emerging from buildings, from vehicles, from what appeared to be carefully prepared positions. And they were all moving with that same fluid, purposeful motion that Marcus had displayed. "Welcome to Earth," Marcus Kane said, his voice carrying a note of dark humor. "Hope you brought your appetite because you're about to bite off way more than you can chew." That's when I realized we weren't the hunters in this scenario. We were the prey, and these soft, weaponless humans were about to teach us exactly what that meant. The next few minutes were a masterclass in tactical humiliation. As more humans emerged from their hiding spots, I began to understand the true scope of our miscalculation. These weren't panicked civilians fleeing in terror. These were soldiers, warriors, and apparently every single one of them had been watching our glorious invasion unfold, while probably sharing snacks and taking bets on how long it would take Marcus to finish off Brutus Prime. "Thrak, I whispered into my comm, tactical assessment. "How many humans are we looking at?" "Sir, I count approximately 400 in the immediate vicinity, with more arriving every minute. They appear to be organized. Organized was putting it mildly. As I watched, the humans moved into what was clearly a predetermined formation. They carried no energy weapons, no plasma cannons, no molecular disruptors. Instead, they held primitive projectile weapons, bladed implements, and some things I couldn't immediately identify, but which looked suspiciously like farming tools. "Commander," came a new voice through the comm, "this is Strike Team Alpha. We've encountered resistance at the industrial complex. The humans are using some sort of explosive devices." Another voice crackled through, Strike Team Beta reporting. "They've somehow turned their transportation vehicles into mobile weapons platforms. We're taking heavy casualties." I felt my confidence crumble like a house of cards in a tornado. "All units, report status." The responses came in rapid succession, each one more devastating than the last. My carefully planned invasion was falling apart at the seams, and we hadn't even been on the planet for an hour. "Sir," Thrak said, his voice tight with controlled panic, "perhaps we should consider a strategic withdrawal." Before I could respond, Marcus Kane cleared his throat politely. "Excuse me, Commander, but I believe we had an agreement. Single combat, winner takes all. I won. That means you leave." I stared at this impossible human who had just single-handedly destroyed our invasion plans. "You cannot seriously expect us to honor such a primitive ritual." "Oh, but I can," Marcus replied, his tone becoming noticeably colder. "You see, we humans have this annoying habit of keeping our word. We also have this other annoying habit of making life extremely unpleasant for anyone who doesn't keep theirs." As if on cue, the humans around us began to move closer. They didn't rush, didn't charge, didn't display any of the aggressive posturing I expected from warriors. Instead, they simply walked forward with the calm confidence of people who knew exactly what they were doing. "Allow me to introduce some of my colleagues," Marcus said, gesturing to the approaching humans. "That's Sarah Miller, former Army Ranger. She once held off an entire enemy platoon for 6 hours, using nothing but a hunting knife and an unhealthy amount of spite." A compact woman with steel-grey eyes nodded in acknowledgement. She was carrying what appeared to be a simple metal rod, but something about the way she held it suggested it was anything but simple. Over there is Jake Thompson, Navy SEAL. He specializes in underwater demolitions, though he's also quite good at making things explode in general. Jake was a lean, scarred man who looked like he had been carved from granite and disappointment. He was casually juggling 3 small spherical objects that I really hoped weren't what I thought they were. And that lovely lady is Maria Santos, Marine Corps sniper. She holds the record for longest confirmed kill at 2,847 meters. With a rifle, of course. She's much more creative up close. Maria was a tall woman with the sort of smile that suggested she was thinking about all the different ways she could end your existence. She carried a long, slender weapon that looked deceptively simple but radiated menace. "But my personal favorite," Marcus continued, "is Tommy Wu over there. He's a former Special Forces medic, which means he knows exactly how to keep you alive while doing terrible, terrible things to you." Tommy was a small, cheerful-looking man who waved at us with genuine enthusiasm. Somehow this made him more terrifying than all the others combined. "The point is," Marcus said, his voice returning to its earlier conversational tone, "you're surrounded by people who have spent their entire adult lives learning how to kill things that are bigger, stronger, and better armed than they are. It's sort of our specialty." I looked around at my troops, trying to gauge their morale. What I saw didn't inspire confidence. These were warriors who had conquered star systems, who had faced down the most dangerous predators in the galaxy, who had never known defeat. And they were scared. Not just concerned or cautious, but genuinely deeply scared. However, Marcus continued, "I'm a reasonable man. Your champion fought with honor, even if he fought like an amateur. So I'll give you a choice. You can leave peacefully, tell your superiors that Earth is under the protection of people who really don't like uninvited guests. And we'll pretend this whole misunderstanding never happened." "And the alternative?" I asked, though I was pretty sure I didn't want to know. Marcus's smile widened, and I suddenly understood why apex predators sometimes developed an instinctive fear of seemingly harmless creatures. "The alternative is that we demonstrate exactly why humans have conquered every environment on their planet, including the ones that were actively trying to kill them." Before I could respond, my comm system exploded with panicked reports from across the battlefield. Strike Team Gamma had encountered something they called guerrilla warfare and were requesting immediate extraction. Strike Team Delta had walked into what they described as booby traps and were no longer responding. Strike Team Epsilon was apparently being hunted by small groups of humans who appeared and disappeared like ghosts. "You see," Marcus said, as if he were reading my thoughts, "the thing about humans is that we're persistence hunters. We don't overpower our prey, we outlast it. We outwit it, we make it exhaust itself fighting shadows while we pick it apart piece by piece." Sir Thrakmur whispered urgently, "We're receiving reports of human reinforcements arriving from multiple directions. They appear to be using some form of coordinated communication system." I looked up at the sky, where our orbital support ships should have been providing cover. Instead, I saw what appeared to be primitive flying machines engaging our advanced fighters in aerial combat. And somehow, impossibly, they seemed to be winning. "How?" I demanded. "How are your primitive aircraft defeating our superior technology?" Marcus chuckled. "Superior technology is only superior if you know how to use it properly. Your pilots are trained to fight other advanced civilizations with predictable tactics and comparable capabilities. They have no idea how to deal with crop dusters loaded with explosives and piloted by people who learned to fly by buzzing cornfields and dodging power lines." As if to emphasize his point, one of our sleek fighter craft plummeted from the sky, trailing smoke and what appeared to be several very angry humans hanging from ropes. "Plus," Marcus added conversationally, "humans have this wonderful ability to adapt. Give us 5 minutes to study your technology, and we'll figure out 3 different ways to use it against you. Give us an hour, and we'll have improved it. Give us a day, and we'll have weaponized it in ways you never imagined." I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized the full implications of what he was saying. We weren't just losing a battle. We were being systematically dismantled by a species that treated warfare like a creative problem-solving exercise. "Commander," came another voice through the comm, "this is the orbital command. We're detecting massive energy signatures from the planet's surface. The humans appear to be targeting our ships with some form of directed energy weapon." I looked at Marcus in amazement. "You have energy weapons?" "Well, technically, lightning is a form of directed energy," Marcus replied with a shrug. "And humans have gotten pretty good at encouraging it to go where we want it to go. Weather manipulation is still in the experimental stages, but we're making progress." The sky above us began to darken ominously, and I could feel the electricity in the air building to dangerous levels. Thunder rumbled in the distance, but it didn't sound entirely natural. "Last chance, Commander," Marcus said, his voice cutting through the growing storm. "Leave now, and we'll consider this a learning experience for both our species. Stay, and we'll show you exactly why humans have never been conquered by anyone, including themselves." I looked at my troops, at the humans surrounding us, at the chaos consuming my carefully planned invasion. For the first time in my career, I was completely out of my depth. These humans weren't just defeating us militarily, they were doing it with a casual efficiency that suggested this was barely worth their full attention. "All units," I said into my comm, the words tasting like defeat, immediate withdrawal. "Return to the ships. We're leaving." The relief in my troops' voices was palpable as they began their retreat. But as we moved toward our extraction point, Marcus Kane called out one final time, "Commander, one more thing." I turned back, expecting some final insult or threat. Instead, Marcus was holding a small device that looked remarkably similar to our own communication equipment. "We've been monitoring your transmissions," he said with that same infuriating calm. "We know about your fleet in orbit, your staging areas in the outer system, and your supply lines back to Therion space." My blood turned to ice. "Impossible. Our encryption is unbreakable." "By your standards, maybe," Marcus replied. "But humans have been breaking codes since before we learned to write. It's another one of our hobbies, like cooking, gardening, and finding new ways to kill things that annoy us." He tossed the device to me, and I caught it automatically. "That contains a complete technical readout of your fleet's capabilities, tactical assessments of your command structure, and a detailed analysis of your species' psychological profile. Consider it a gift." I stared at the device in horror. "Why are you telling me this?" Marcus's expression became serious for the first time since our encounter began. "Because I want you to go back to your superiors and explain something very important. Earth isn't just protected by its military. It's protected by every single human on the planet. We're all soldiers when we need to be. We're all inventors when we need to be. We're all survivors when we need to be." He gestured toward the other humans, who were watching our retreat with a mixture of amusement and disappointment. "These people aren't professional warriors. Sarah runs a bakery. Jake teaches swimming lessons. Maria is a librarian. Tommy operates a food truck. But when something threatens their home, they become something else entirely." "What's that?" I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. Marcus Kane smiled one last time, and in that smile I saw the future of any species foolish enough to threaten humanity. They become creative. As we retreated to our ships, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had just encountered something unprecedented in galactic history. Not just a warrior species, but something far more dangerous, a species that treated survival as an art form and warfare as a recreational activity. The worst part, I was absolutely certain this wasn't over. Humans, I was beginning to realize, were the sort of species that held grudges. And we had just given them a very good reason to become interested in Therion space. As our ships lifted off from the surface of Earth, I made a mental note to update my resume. Something told me that being the commander who lost an entire invasion force to a species of primitive humans wasn't going to be a career highlight. But more importantly, I made another mental note: never, ever underestimate a species that considers physics a weapon and creativity a survival skill. Because the next time we met, I had a feeling the humans were going to show us exactly what they could accomplish when they really put their minds to it. And frankly, that scared me more than anything else in the galaxy.